Welcome to Passport to Everywhere with Indagare's Melissa Biggs-Bradley.
Melissa is the founder and CEO of Indagare, a travel and media company committed to inspiring and empowering people to change their lives and the world through travel, while having a positive impact on the places they visit. On the show, Melissa will transport you to dream destinations, share the latest travel news and trends, and introduce you to the most extraordinary people she has met on the road.
I believe in serendipity, and Paris is perfect for that.
Follow her behind the scenes to the world's most legendary hotels and join us as she explores the future of travel.
Welcome to Passport to Everywhere.
Welcome back to Passport to Everywhere. I'm really excited about today's guest, who I've been lucky to get to know on numerous visits to Paris. Inès de la Fressange has been the epitome of French style for decades and is quite possibly one of the most famous French models of all time. Her effortless elegance and graceful confidence transformed her into a timeless icon, and her down-to-earth directness earned her the nickname of the talking mannequin, or the model who talks too much. But frankly, it's her frankness, even more than her beauty, I think, that has made her such an influence on the cultural dialogue on style, beauty, and aging. Inès started modeling at the age of 17 and has worked with all the greats, including Jean-Paul Gaultier, Karl Lagerfeld, and Yves Saint Laurent. She was also the first model to sign an exclusive contract with Chanel and became well known as Karl Lagerfeld's muse in the 1980s. She was later chosen to be the face of Marianne, a symbol of the French Republic, which led to her very own wax statue in the Grévin Museum in Paris. Not only is Inès a fashion icon, she's also an author, designer, and an entrepreneur. She's co-authored many books on Parisian style, including Parisian Chic, which was published in 17 languages and sold more than 1 million copies worldwide. She's also been the brand ambassador for Maison Roger Vivier, the face of L'Oréal Paris, and she's featured collaborations at UNIQLO and opened her own fashion line, the Inès de la Fressange Paris brand, where she creates pieces that capture the Parisian sense of style. Paris has always been a special city to me, and I'm captivated by the street style every time I visit. So I'm thrilled to get to talk to Inès today about her career, her life, and the je ne sais quoi of Parisian style. Let's get started.
Join Melissa on the journey. You're listening to Passport to Everywhere. Here's your host, Melissa Biggs-Bradley.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Inès, for joining me and talking about your career and Paris and fashion and all the things that you love and are excited about.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you.
I'm so happy to have you on this. Let's start, because I like to start at the beginning. You did not have a fantasy growing up as a child of becoming in the fashion world. It was a bit of an accident. Will you explain a little bit, because you're now this icon of French style and Parisian elegance, but that's not your background, and I would love to hear a little bit about how your evolution started.
Yes, indeed. When that was in the 70s, in France, we didn't have such a good opinion about being a model. And I quite liked fashion and clothes. And my grandmother, I was living a lot with her. She loved couture clothes and fashion and jewelries. And then I have an education around fashion. But making it a job, I wasn't thinking about it. And finally, I became a model, but I thought it was for a short time that I would go back to my studies. That was history of art and archaeology. And finally, I've been a model for a long time and then a designer.
And how did it actually happen for you, in the sense of becoming a model and the years that you were a model? You were working with people who are legends now, like Yves Saint Laurent, and it was a different moment. Can you describe a little bit what it was like being a young woman entering into that world?
Yes, indeed. Actually, you never decide to be a model, you're chosen. It's one of the rare jobs where you can't say, I'm going to be a model. You have to be asked. I had a boyfriend at this time who told me, oh, you could be a model, I'll bring you in an agency. And then he took me to an agency, and I felt immediately they were not at all enthusiastic. And in the staircase, I told him, I told you it was a stupid idea. And then a few months later, I had dinner with the owner of a famous agency, and she asked me to be a model. This is to say that really you don't decide. And at this time, there were what we call the créateurs, the creative designers of ready-to-wear, ready to wear. I was doing shows. It was huge shows. It was far more important suddenly than haute couture. And I was doing many, many shows. I was not that successful for pictures and magazines and all. No, I had short hair, nearly no makeup, wearing a black jacket, leather jacket, and then I was bizarre. They thought I was bizarre. And and finally, after a few years, I had a lot of success. And then it was very interesting because it was the moment of Thierry Mugler, Claude Montana, Kenzo, and people were fighting to see these shows, you know. And then at the top of my career, I used to work a lot with Karl Lagerfeld, who started to work for Chanel. And they asked me for an exclusive contract with them, saying I couldn't do shows or pictures for anybody else. And then I made this decision to quit, finally, this work of model, to be part of the company and work only for them. And that was quite a typical. Since then, there were never a contract like this, you know.
Yeah. So going back to Karl Lagerfeld, because that was a moment, I mean, talking about a creative, he was somebody who had a huge impact, and he asked you to be exclusive for Chanel. What was it like working with Lagerfeld? What, if you had to say what you kind of learned from the Chanel experience, I'm curious what the impact that had on your sense of fashion and style and art.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I can say I've learned my work there because I had the best teacher and the best school. The teacher was Lagerfeld, and the school was Chanel. And then I was sitting next to him, and then he was working a lot in front of everyone, drawing in front of everyone. And then I would say, you know, oh, we should do a coat like this or a jacket like this. And he would tell me, make a draw. It would be more precise. And I was making drawings. And he was telling me, oh, but where you put the buttons, how do you close that, draw the shoulder. And then it was like a private lesson. And also we were choosing the fabrics together and the models also, and seeing all the prototypes. And then I've learned a lot because he was talking a lot, explaining a lot, and he would leave everybody saying what they think. Nobody would dare, but me, yes. And sometimes he would ask me, which fabric would you make this clothes? And then I would suggest things, and he would explaining me why it was difficult or why it was a good idea. And he was totally open to any suggestion. And that was great fun because the sky was the limit. I mean, we could do whatever we wanted in all the prototypes in multiple colors. And then I saw how a studio was working, but above all, a company was working, because with Chanel, I had to travel worldwide, and with the perfume people, the makeup people, the people of jewelries, of watches, and see all the people working in the company all over the world.
Yeah, what an amazing education.
Yes, because in a sense, after you have to forget things because you work in such a luxury, you know, you never ask for the price of a fabric or something. But in another way, you learn quality, beauty, excellence, handcraft, and you're working with the best people. It can be people doing embroideries or feathers, and they're the best of the best.
And then I believe it was when you were under contract with Chanel that the French government asked you to be the representative of La France, which had never been, maybe explain, because not everybody listening will know what this means to be La France.
Indeed, there's a person called Marianne that you can see on Delacroix's paintings, and she's the symbol of freedom, liberty, fraternity, solidarity, and with a funny little hat. It's the symbol of the Republic, French Republic. And in the past, Brigitte Bardot was the inspiration to make the statues that are in all the city halls, and after Catherine Deneuve. And then when I've been asked, of course, I was very flattered. For American people, I would say it's like being Uncle Sam. And of course, it was not for me, but I personally, but I was elected by all the mayors of France. There's an election,
Okay.
and they choose a personality that could give her face. I would say, and
To
after
personify.
yeah,
the
personify
Republic.
exactly. Yeah, I was very, very flattered about that, and it was fun, because at this time the right wing was coming up in France, extreme right, with very dangerous ideas,
Jean-Marie Le Pen.
Exactly. And then it was nice to say that maybe I was French and that everybody saw me as the typical French woman, but I had to remind that I had blood coming from everywhere, from Czechoslovakia, Poland, Colombia, Argentina, and that was all about France too, a country of human rights that was open to foreigners, and that it was fun because I was also coming from an aristocratic family and with a quite long name like this, but to show that that was France, history, recent history, ancient history, and a mixture,
Yeah.
And then, of course, for Chanel, it was nice for them that the image of the house became the image of the country too.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. But then you did, as you said, you learned under Karl and became a designer yourself. And you continue to work as a designer, and you work both with bigger houses like Vivier and your own label, and then also even beyond ready to wear with UNIQLO. So really
Indeed.
going from the haute couture all the way to UNIQLO, it's about style and good fashion. So how did that happen? What was the sort of first step when you said,
Actually, when you work with the most gifted, talented people in the world, like Jean-Paul Gaultier, Saint Laurent, Lagerfeld, and all that, you have the impression that no way you could do the same than them, even if you've been learning a lot from them. And once in the studio, Karl told me, once you will be a designer. And then I
so
said,
he saw it in you before you saw it in yourself?
Yes, indeed. And then and then I said, "Come on, I don't have your imagination, your talent. I couldn't do what you do. I would do clothes that women could wear every day and very wearable things, but not especially things for the press or for the runway." And then he told me, that could be a concept. And then finally he gave me the authorization to think I could do something that couldn't be compared to what he does, or did, and but could be interesting too. And then, yes, I opened my brand in the 90s, and after it stopped, and we relaunched it 8 years ago. And UNIQLO asked me at the same moment to make a collection for them. And since ever, I thought it was interesting to show to women they don't need a lot to be good, and didn't even have to spend a lot to look good. And as I've always been working with luxury and luxurious brands, and I must say very expensive brands, it was interesting to work with for such a company, to show we could do really nice things for all kind of women worldwide. And it was interesting exercise.
I love that you have all these different collections. I'm lucky I have pieces from the different ones, because it's about what people look like and how they feel in their clothes. I'm curious, because you mentioned working with Gaultier and Mugler and all of these incredible names. Do you have particular memories of your time as in that period that stand out as particularly memorable or wonderful?
I was known to make a lot of jokes on runways. I remember jumping out from the runway, sitting next to the journalist, or coming with my dog with a camera, or making the clown on the runway, even arriving with pajamas and laying down, and then really things very, very different than today. And sometimes I see on Instagram there's old films, old pictures, but I don't want to be the kind Sunset Boulevard, remembering of herself like this and being so self-concerned. But I remember once that we were doing a fashion show in a place, There was a club of riding horses. And then when I arrived, I said to the owner of the brand, "Oh, you're doing a show there and there's no horse. What a pity." And then he said, "Would you like a horse on the runway?" I said, "Well, why not?" And then, as it wasn't organized, they arrived suddenly with a horse, but without a saddle. And they told me, "Is it fine for you?" I said, "Yeah, of course." And then I went on the horse. But what I didn't think it's that they had fabric on the runway, and then it was very hard for the horse to walk on that. And also with all the photographers, suddenly the horse was frightened, and he jumped like this a little bit. Everybody has been screaming. They thought I would fell from the horse. I didn't. But of course now I remember this moment.
That's so funny. And then you have also written a lot of books. You've written books about style. You've written books about Paris. It's a combination of your favorite things. How did that end up happening?
I realized that today there's a lot of brands. They're everywhere with the same products. And then you can find the same pair of glasses in Naples, New York, or Tokyo. And it's not fun for foreigners arriving in Paris. And then I was always making lists for friends or customers arriving at Roger Vivier of places where they could go in Paris to have very special things you can't find anywhere else. And then I wanted to do an address book. And my editor wanted also to put some advices. And then I found it very pretentious, but I did it. It was a huge success. We were New York Times best, I don't know what, and we sold more than 1 million copies of this book. And 2 years ago, I had to redo it because some addresses disappeared or they were not as nice as before. And then after I've done several books of decoration or advices how to dress up, like cooking books, like things that you have at home and how to mix them. And I do it with a friend of mine she's a Swiss journalist. It means she's very precise and workaholic.
That's so fun. And you mentioned Vivier, and I actually want to ask you about how you became involved with Roger Vivier, because he was the legendary shoe designer of so many styles that we now take for granted. But when the brand was bought by Diego Della Valle and relaunched, you became the creative director, I think is the right term, but you tell me. But I'd love to have you explain that relationship.
Actually, I don't have a title. He indeed bought the name, and he wanted to relaunch the brand. And many people forgot the name of Roger Vivier, even if it was somebody very important in the history of fashion. And then we had to do everything, and that was making the decoration of the shop, taking care of the packaging, hiring salesperson for the shop.
Building the collection of
and
shoes.
The collection, there were a designer to design the collection. I was the one taking care of everything else.
But didn't you also get to buy archival pieces?
Oh, yes, indeed. Immediately I thought it was interesting to buy vintage, antique products from Roger Vivier, but also his collage, and books about him, or books where we could find some documents. And it was very interesting. I started in a garage, and then now we've built an empire, but it was 20 years ago. I'm very proud of it, because sometimes people arrive and tell me, "What do you do for Vivier?" And then I say, "Nothing. I mean, it's so successful and known." And then I'm maybe the guardian of the temple, and I'm the only one who actually knew Roger Vivier himself. That's my title, I think.
So you mentioned that you've done some design books, and you did one on the Parisian style at home. I would love if you, I want to talk to you about your fashion advice too, but what to you makes Parisian chic at home? If you think about how it's different from other cultures, and you've traveled a lot, like what is it that is distinctly Parisian chic at home?
A lot of people have been telling me everywhere about Parisian style and Parisian chic, and I was always saying, "Listen, I've seen the most elegant women in India and Argentina and in America, everywhere. And then I was saying, no. I mean, style and elegance, you can find it everywhere. And that's, I still think like this. But it's true that there is a Parisian and French style. And it's like sophisticated and casual together, and never showing off. It means there's a lot of countries, it seems that women buy things to show off, like, look what I got, look how wealthy is my husband, or like, I can afford to have this brand and show it off. And it's not the purpose in France, never. Women, you make a compliment and say, oh, this comes from Monoprix. Monoprix, it's like, I don't know, Woolworth. Or you say, I love your jacket, and they will answer you. They should say thank you, but they say, oh, it's an old thing, I have it since ever. It's like they want to look effortless, and they make an effort, you know. They just know how to mix up sometimes very luxurious things with more simple things, more sportive things. And there's a way like this, they don't want to look rich. That's the thing. And they want to look comfortable. And they prefer, finally, if you make compliment about what they're saying rather than how they're looking.
No, that's so interesting. And is it the same at home, do you think, where they mix, expensive and not expensive
indeed.
and old, and they're not trying to look like it's all new?
Yeah, exactly. It's like at home, they don't want to give the feeling they had a decorator, and they want to give the feeling it has been like this since ever. They don't want to show off also in any way with objects, things, and for instance, they can have glasses at the table who are not all the same. They're just beautiful glasses, or the chairs can be mixed up. It's not all the same chairs around the table. The idea is not to have glittering things. Yeah.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, but I think in many ways in France, the holding on to things, whether it's furniture from family and redoing it, or a jacket from 20 years ago and figuring out a different way to wear it, there's a real respect for classic things and mixing them in a way that's...
Yeah, I think in France they don't throw away things, but also they don't change homes as often that in America. You know, when you meet people in a city in America, doesn't mean he has been living there since ever. And in France, people don't move so much. They don't change their work so much either. And they keep things for their grandmothers, grandfathers, their family things. And they spend less, you know, for clothes and for things at home. And I don't want to say it's better or worse, but it's like this.
Yeah. And what about your own style? How has it changed over the years, or has it?
I think it's important to change a little bit. And then it's always important to be aware of what's going on, fashion, not to become a fashion victim, but to see how things are changing. But however, since ever, I love men clothes. I love big cashmere sweaters, V-neck, and since ever I wear jeans. But sometimes the jeans can be large. Sometimes they can be with flare pants, I think the proportions change. Like if you say white shirt, it doesn't mean anything if it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, today. And then in this way it changes. But if you come at home, you'll see that I'm a maniac. I have something like 10 pair of white jeans and 15 navy blue sweaters and 4 black velvet jackets. And I think most of the women, more or less, they buy all the time the same, like looking for the perfect thing. Yeah, I must have something like 15 navy blue jackets. They're all different, of course. But, you know, there's obsessions like this.
Yeah. And what about traveling and style? Do you have a uniform? Do you have tips? Because you have traveled everywhere. And I think agree on the simplicity is best when traveling, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, when I was young, I used to travel with 3 cases. At this time, you would wear a lot of accessories like belts and jewelries and fake jewelries. And then one was for the jewelry, one for the shoes, one for the clothes, and too much each time. And now I don't want to travel with a huge... I have a tiny one that goes in the plane or in the train. And I know what I'm going to need. For instance, if I take white jeans, I know that with the black varnish loafers in daytime, it's going to be nice. But with velvet slippers in the evening, it can be nice too. And then I try not to bring too much. And there's some items like, I don't know, black velvet pants, I know I will need them in all kind of circumstances. And I will feel okay. And also with my brand, I try to do things that I can wear everywhere and with all kind of meteo, of weathers, like satin parka, or if it's winter time in black, it's great. In summer, it's nice too. I don't have to wear a lot under. I have tips like this, and it's what I want to do in my shop, to help women, not to buy a lot, but to buy the right things that they will actually wear, feel good in them.
Yeah.
This is Passport to Everywhere. We'll be right back after the break.
I'm Melissa Biggs-Bradley, and you're listening to today's episode of Passport to Everywhere with French model, designer, and author Inès de la Fressange. Be sure to keep listening for my latest intel from Paris after our conversation.
Passport to Everywhere with Melissa Biggs-Bradley continues. Listen to new episodes every Thursday on all podcast platforms.
And you have daughters of your own, and I'm curious how you feel their approach to fashion is different from when you were younger. I mean, society has changed, the role of fashion somewhat and our approach to it. What are some of the things that you think are different?
What is different is that they're not shopaholic like I was, and they're concerned by the planet, and they know it's not good to buy many, many things and mass market things and just wear them twice, and that's all. They buy a lot of vintage things, and they mixed up things with a huge freedom, and then they put all kind of things with sneakers, for instance, or boots. It's interesting for me to see that sometimes they just put things together because they love them, and then if they love them, they think it will go together, and they never show off. They don't want absolutely to be sexy, and never actually. But I'm very flattered because they steal a lot of things in my closet. And I remember I've met this actress once, and she told me, "Oh, my daughters, they steal all my clothes." And then I said, "But you should be flattered. At least it means you have great things." My daughters, I think they have a radar in their brains to know the brand new cashmere sweater or something. Things that they wouldn't buy, but they're really happy to find them in my closet. And they notice immediately when I have something new. Then my eldest daughter, she laughs a lot because when she received compliments about what she's wearing and people ask her, where does it come from? She always says, "Oh, it's mommy's closet."
And I don't want you to have to speak for all of French women on this one either, but I do believe that there is a difference that women in France have had for a long time towards aging, and certainly in the US it's different. But putting aside generalities, I'm curious, what is your approach as a beautiful woman who cares about style but is getting older, and what do you think are the things that matter the most?
Yeah, what is difficult, it's when you buy the magazine for women, you don't see so many women of a certain age. And then there's no example, because you see only girls who are 25 or not over 30, and then it's hard to find a style and try not to imitate, but to be inspired by some people. And I think today, even very young girls go and have plastic surgery. And personally, I find it difficult because after a while everybody has the same cat face, and they all look alike, and they don't look young. They look bizarre. I wouldn't say it's nice to have wrinkles, and rather advise everybody to take care and put makeup, not too much, and take care of herself. And of course, when you wake up in the morning and you've been sleeping 8 hours but you look exhausted, who can say that it's great to get old, But however, women I admire, it's not these women who absolutely want to look like when they were 25. The one I really like and admire, it's not these women that absolutely want to be like on the market,
Yeah.
And then after a while, it's your generosity, your interest in life, your way to see life that appears in your eyes and in your face. But I think journalists should, instead of showing all models who are still beautiful today, they should show normal women, doctors, I don't know, sellers in shops or whatever, to be examples and help other women. This thing about youth, absolutely. I would just say it's a pity youth is only when you're young. It would be better when you're older.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I, as the American in the room, can say that I do find when I'm in France, in particular, that I see more of the women in the cafes or restaurants or in the streets that represent exactly what you're talking about, that are so elegant and attractive, but they don't have plastic surgery. They have their wrinkles, but they have style and they have an intelligence and a sophistication and a sense of ease within who they are that is really lovely. And they're not trying to look sexy and 25 years younger. They're very comfortable with their age and who they are. And that to me is so much more inspiring as a role model than the obsession with youth.
Yeah, I agree totally. My advice would rather be take care of others and enjoy life, enjoy the fact that you're healthy and you look great. And make a little effort, of course, but have other purposes that you in the mirror.
Yeah. So speaking of things, rituals or wellness and health, what are some of the things that, if you say are most important to you in terms of feeling good and looking good? What are some of the things that you either products you use or habits that you have?
Nowadays, a lot of people are obsessed by what they eat, by doing yoga, by avoiding, I don't know, gluten, milk, whatever. And it's a large part of their life. And sometimes a little bit too much, And and then I think it's, if you have healthy food and you eat all kind of things and not a lot, if you quit eating when you're not hungry anymore, if you sleep, if you take off properly your makeup every day, don't go out with a cream, it's enough, It means you have to start smiling in the mirror in the morning, and the brain understands you're happy. And that would be the best advice I could give, to know how to appreciate what you've got instead of being frustrated of what you don't have or afraid about what you're eating, what you're doing, or how you're going to get old. Being happy is the best recipe, and it's an exercise.
Yeah. Joy certainly comes through, and it is beautiful.
Yeah.
And you wrote a book, or you co-authored a book called Happiness, The Art of Togetherness. Can you tell me what you learned from doing that book?
I've learned that I've done it with 2 friends, and that in life, friends are essential. You need friends. You need to see them when you're depressed. I mean, everybody's a little bit depressed at some moment. Friends is the clue. Saying what's going wrong, giggling with friends is essential. And that sometimes we bother ourselves with small problems that are not important in life. And sometimes just saying it, you realize that it's not that important. Everybody can complain about their husband and all that. And, and sometimes we hate our husband for a moment, and we know that 3 days after it will be fine. And it's good to say to a friend. I mean, it's little things like this that grandmothers used to say before. And before, people were living with the whole family in a farm, and they would talk with a lot of people. And everybody of all ages could give advices of common sense things, finally.
Yeah.
And of course, people could tell me, oh, you have a lucky life, an easy life, and you help, and it's easy for you to smile and laugh. But I've seen the most wealthy people in the world. They're not the most happy. Sometimes I have the feeling it's really very simple things, but sometimes you need simple things. It's the same for fashion.
Yeah. But often, yeah, as you said, people get distracted and they think it's more complicated, both in fashion and in happiness, right? So a couple of quick things I'd love to ask you, like a perfect day in Paris for you.
Oh, and then it would be walking. I believe in serendipity, and Paris is perfect for that, because you walk and suddenly you see a writer has been living there, or there's a door open, you see the courtyard of a place, or you stop and there's a little restaurant or a little place to have tea, which is nice. And walking in Paris is important, not having an appointment or a real schedule. I think losing time is something important. And today people, they have so much scheduled. They go to sport, to exercise, or they have lunch with friends. Everything is in a schedule. And they feel guilty losing time. And I think it's important for balance, And then in Paris, there's small museums like Musée Luxembourg or parks, and where you can go. Everybody goes to the Louvre or to see the Tour Eiffel, but there's a lot of small museums, very interesting. There's really so many things to do, actually.
What would be some of your favorite small museums in Paris?
Some museums really unknown, like Cognac-Jet, the Carnavalet, the museum of the city, and then you see images of how Paris was before. It's a very nice one.
So do you have a favorite place, because this is a travel show, place that you're dreaming of traveling to or that you want to go back to?
I love India. I discovered what was the meaning of light in India. And I feel good in India. I love the food. I love the people. I used to go often in Jaipur. I love Rajasthan especially. And then I would love to go back. And my mother's Argentinian, and she lives with my father half of the time in Argentina. And then I would love to go back, also to Chile. I would love to go and ski in the boogaboos. First, because I loved the word boogaboos. And second, because I love skiing.
Fantastic. And if you had to summarize what you think the greatest gift of travel is?
The gift of travel?
Yeah. What has travel given you?
Travel is good because first, you're happy to go home. You forget every day's little problems, and other civilization can bring you a lot. And for the education of my children, I took them to Egypt, to Cuba, to India when they were really very tiny. And it was part of their education. The generosity, the open-minded way and all comes from there, And they agree with all kind of people very quickly. They have friends from everywhere, all kind of nationalities. And this comes from traveling.
Yeah. And what would you say your favorite thing about living in Paris is?
My favorite thing about living in Paris is that it's beautiful. Each time I'm with my bike crossing the Seine, I watch and say, oh, but this is gorgeous. It's incredible. Everywhere there's all buildings, all streets, so beautiful. And it's international. I mean, many Parisians, they come from other countries. And Paris has been made by foreigners. And this mixture of cultures, of centuries, and different little cities next to them. Because if you're in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, it's totally different than if you're in the Marais or in the 16th. And you can go walking from these places and changes totally. And this is what I like, because if you're Place de la Concorde or in Montmartre, it's like two different cities.
Yeah,
That's fun.
Exactly right. And yet every single one of them has layers of beauty. And I think when we're talking about what makes happy, it's being grateful and being in a place where there's beauty all around you. It just makes, for me, it makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. And I love cliches. When I was young, I was living in the country, and then Paris was a dream, And there's a cliche of Paris, and with little streets and food shops and people walking the street, and you see the Sacré-Cœur, and suddenly you go in a street like Rue des Martyrs, for instance, and you're in a postcard, And I realized that maybe because of the fact I was living in the country, I'm not really a Parisian, and but it's fun for me to see it. And even places where there's a lot of tourists, like Montmartre, I love it because I imagine Toulouse-Lautrec living there and Hemingway going from Pigalle to Montparnasse walking, or Henry Miller, Fitzgerald, Man Ray, all these people who loved Paris. You can easily imagine how it was at that time because things didn't change. Sometimes even the restaurants, you go at Le Select, and you see exactly what Hemingway was saying and wrote about. And it didn't change. But I love the fact that you can find things you saw in literature.
Yeah.
Or in movies.
Thank you, Inez.
It was a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure. I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today to learn about Paris and Parisian style from one of the greats. I hope Inez inspired you to embrace your individuality and simplicity with the beautiful city of Paris top of mind. Stay tuned for this week's Indagare Insight, where I'll reveal one of my favorite recent discoveries in the city. And for more on Inez, follow at Inès de la Fressange Official on Instagram.
Here are this week's Indagare Insights.
For this week's Indagare Insight, I thought I would share an update from my most recent trip to Paris. We at Indagare love Paris so much that we do a lot of Paris updates, both in our newsletters and our destination reports, a couple times a year. One just went out in our most recent Indagare newsletter, which I hope you are signed up for. It's our free weekly travel news dispatch that you can subscribe to on indagare.com. That's INDAGARE.com. And in my latest newsletter, I celebrate the city's range of dining options and share some of my favorite Parisian restaurants that serve foreign cuisines, including the Spanish restaurant that everyone is buzzing about and the new hot spot from chef Asaf Granit, who is the first Israeli chef to win a Michelin star. So here is a bit of my latest restaurant news. What I find the most exciting about today's restaurant scene in Paris, and this is a scene that I've been studying for many years now, is how it keeps expanding its breadth of offerings. You can still dine in incredible temples of gastronomy like L'Épicure at the Hotel Bristol and Arpège, where really a vegetarian fine dining experience can be rhapsodic. But you can now also find seriously great burgers at new places like Dinar, which is the outpost of the famous Ferdi that opened during COVID for takeaway. And now it has a handful of tables, as well as a line out the door, just like the original one on Montabour still does every single night. The other place that is serving up an amazing burger is the beloved New York restaurant Four Charles has brought its burger to Paris in an otherwise quintessential Parisian bistro called Renommé, which my food-obsessed colleague Catherine Nathanson has written up for the site. And for a casual but very French lunch or dinner, a new favorite brasserie of mine is Alfred in the First Arrondissement, which has a decor that really pays tribute to Le Corbusier's seaside cabin in the south of France, and it serves real French comfort food. Classics like a perfectly cooked chicken and pepper steak and frites, and my favorite dessert on the menu is the brioche perdue, which is a sublime salted caramel riff on French toast. For a more traditional take on a casual bistro meal, Catherine loves Le Bon Georges in the 9th arrondissement, and we both love Le Petit Lutetia in the 6th. Adding to the range of dining, as I mentioned in my intro, are these many restaurants that celebrate foreign cuisines. Anna, which is on the Rue Marbeuf, serves really yummy modern Greek food in a stylish small dining room. It opened a couple years ago, and I've gone back many times and really love it. Then there is another exotic new entry on the right bank that is getting a lot of buzz, and that's the Spanish restaurant at the new Maison Delano Hotel, which is formerly the Buddha Bar. It's called Chambre Bleue, and it's helmed by Michelin star chef Danny Garcia. My favorite Parisian restaurant for Lebanese cuisine is still Lisa, which lives up to the high bar that was set by its namesake in Beirut, where I've also been lucky to dine, and both serve just incredible Lebanese dishes. And I love Shirvan, which serves Azerbaijani cuisine. That's on Avenue Georges V. And the team there, like the one at Lisa, turns up the music on the weekends after dinner and makes it a really fun party scene. There's a great DJ at Shirvan. But really, it's the Israeli chef, Asif Granit, who delivers the best blend of revelry and gastronomy. That's at his new outpost called Kapara. And his outposts are popping up all over Paris. I'll fill you in on all of them. But located in the same space where he formerly had Balagan, which was another favorite of ours, the new restaurant serves up his iconic, soulful Middle Eastern home cooking at 2 nightly seatings. One's at 7 and the other's at 9. And if you sit at the counter and watch the chefs work and cheer each other on, it's just a really wonderful experience. It reminded me of the first time I had dinner at the restaurant that he opened that got him the first Michelin star, called Chabour, which is still around. It is a reservation that is much harder to get, and it is a much more intimate multi-course experience at the counter. So Kapara makes for a more casual, fun evening, and there are tables you can join with friends. I love sitting at the counter, but it beautifully showcases Granit's talent and his love for food and how it should always be celebrated. I mean, every night is really a party there. And so the other restaurants that Granit's opened that are also worth a try, the vegetarian one, Tekis in the Marais, is excellent. I was there last fall with a group. And he recently opened Boubal at the new Hotel Le Grand Mazarin, which is also in the Marais. And at the bar there, you can order cocktails with a nod to the restaurant's distinct Middle Eastern and Mediterranean cuisine that's served next door, like a drink inspired by the baba ganoush. Sounds strange, but it's very good by all accounts. And then a couple of perennial favorites that we tried on this trip that really still retain their charm and deserve a mention. And that is the tiny La Bourse et la Vie, which was opened by chef Daniel Rose, who runs Le Coucou in New York. And it still has an incredible steak au poivre with frites, as well as really yummy foie gras. And on the left bank, we love the intimate and traditional Josephine Chez Dumonet. And that is a place where you absolutely should have the langoustine with lemon butter. It is not to be missed, nor is the beef bourguignon, if you like meat as your main course. And for those who are craving something a little different and the sweet factor, there's a lot of hype for another place in the Marais called Folderol, and that's Folderol, which serves only ice cream and wine. The natural wine selection is apparently fantastic. And if it's hot, as it's getting warmer as we head in towards summer, you're going to have a longer wait to get there because the ice cream is all made in-house, and it definitely draws a queue every day, as does the wine that changes by the glass daily. So for the last example I want to give of the range in Paris that I really love is kind of old and new at the same time. The wonderful star chef Yves Saint Laurent, who studied under Christian Constant before he opened his wildly successful Comptoir de Relais Saint-Germain, has shuttered his main comptoir for the moment. But he's added another one of his counter-seating only offshoots, which are called l'avant comptoir, which means the before the counter. The first one was the l'avant comptoir de la Terre, and that opened in a slip of a space next to the comptoir because it was giving the people waiting in those long lines to get in, because he didn't take reservations, a chance to have hors d'oeuvres while they were patiently waiting. The small bites there, though, were so delicious in their own right that Cam de Bord decided to start serving meals of the mini dishes at a counter. And then he acquired the space next door. So the first one was l'Avant Comptoir de la Terre, it still is. And the second one is l'Avant Comptoir de la Mer. And there he serves the same thing at a counter, incredible small seafood based upon what's good that day. And he wants that same spirit. He said that he loves not having table service because it creates a kind of a camaraderie amongst food lovers. And there really is just a great atmosphere. I love stopping in for lunch at one of the l'Avant Comptoirs for dinner on my own or lunch on my own. And you can order something really delicious in small plates for a super reasonable price. So the new one, which is called l'Avant Comptoir du Marché, is located not far from the originals, which is very near the Place de l'Odéon in the 6th on the left bank. This one is a little bit closer to the Luxembourg Gardens. Cam de Bord's obsession with making the most of daily products and offering them at reasonable prices remains. But here, in addition to seats at the counter, diners can also sit on a terrace under the arches of the historic Marché Saint-Germain, where fresh ingredients have been worshipped and dealt for decades. So while the first two Avant Comptoirs are divided into seafood and meat, at l'Avant Comptoir du Marché, you can order both of those things. He serves both in the same signature small dishes. So you can order a charcuterie plate or a perfectly prepared artichoke dressed with octopus and herbs and vinegar for less than 10 euros. And there are always glasses of wine starting at just €3.50. So it's not just a range of food, but cheers to a range of cuisine and prices and style and atmosphere living on and expanding in Paris. I hope you enjoyed the latest update, and please do send me your comments and suggestions or favorite places in Paris that we should add to our site to Indagare Founder on Instagram or passport@indagare.com. If all this talk about Paris has you ready to take a trip, you may want to check out two of our Indagare journeys happening this year. In May, there are still a few spots left on the Paris with Paige Knox Indagare journey. Highlights of this art-focused trip include visits to many of the special places that Inès and I talked about today. You'll visit neighborhoods like Montmartre and Saint-Germain-des-Prés that were important in the lives and work of famous artists. You'll also go on a private tour of the Musée d'Orsay and their new exhibition, Paris 1874, Inventing Impressionism. It's the 150th anniversary of the invention of Impressionism this year. And later this year, I'll be leading an Indagare journey in November called A Fashion Lover's Paris, where we'll connect with fashion designers and influencers, just like Inès. In fact, we'll hopefully visit with her, at private receptions and legendary French fashion houses. You can learn more at indagare.com/journeys. And next week, I'll be speaking with the Bucket List family, one of the most adventurous families in the world. Jessica G., who just released her first book with National Geographic, and her husband, Garrett, will join me to discuss all things family travel. This is a fun one that you won't want to miss.
Thank you for joining us at Passport to Everywhere.
We hope you'll join the journey and subscribe. For more travel inspiration, visit indagare.com. INDAGARE. This has been Passport to Everywhere.